Brandon, your Rangers suck.
Well, you know what? Take your deviled tail and shove it up your ass.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. To
oh
see
my God,
hockey
this is so big right here.
At its most hockey-ish. Like what, goons and fights? No, that's not what that sport's about. No, not at all.
Oh yeah. This is arguably one of the biggest rivalries in all of hockey, if not all of sports. A rivalry that honestly is so vindictive that the teams themselves have literally actually started fighting from the opening face-off. This is actually a picture from a bunch of years ago, about 10 years ago, where literally the opening puck drop in the first seconds led to a complete brawl that led to blood, penalties, and suspensions. And this is going to be something.
I don't see that happening this time go around, but
I was
those are the days.
If I recall that incident, and hockey is definitely not one of my high points of knowledge. It was towards the end of the season, and both teams were actually already eliminated by this point. Right. Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah. There is a long, long history going back decades. Probably the 93-94 season really being the really massive starting point of that. The Game 7 finals, Stefan Matteau scoring and breaking the hearts of all Devils fans. I remember I was a teenager at the time. It crushed me. And then, of course, Adam Henrique about 10 years ago scoring in overtime in Game 6 that sent the Devils to the Eastern Conference Finals, beating the Rangers in the process. So this is a battle of, how do we put this? Basically the lowly stepbrother and, the one that everybody thinks highly of.
I would not necessarily qualify Devils and Rangers in that manner anymore. I think there was a time, but I think after the Devils have won a few more championships than the Rangers and have moved themselves into
they have
the North Jersey sports New York area sports pantheon quite well. But I will say you have teams that are located very close to each other. You have teams that are in the same division, and when they meet in the playoffs, a lot of times it matters, right? This is the exact opposite of the Phillies and the Mets, where they're close to each other, but it never matters. These teams do meet in important playoff series enough. They were still chanting. I believe they were still chanting 1940 in that 1993 series, yes. And that was the end of the 1940s chant.
And then basically they started with 1994 because it's been almost 30 years there.
Yeah, no, and I recall that series. I was probably the peak of my hockey fandom as I was there. I was just that right age. Lots of Devils fans around me. I was a Devils fan. So, but you're right. There was a ton of Ranger fans around us. It was a very mixed bag, just like Mets, Yankees in the area. So certainly a very strong rivalry. And like I said, one of quite close to each other, physically close to each other. The fans every day, you go to work in one of those areas, you could have a rival on public transportation right next to you.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's going to make this absolutely wild. Early predictions on several fronts are giving the Rangers the advantage. I will also counter that by saying that these are the same pundits who said the Devils were going to miss the playoffs this year. So keep that in the back of your mind. I think out of fairness, well, that's okay. Listen, it's okay. I'm not
right there.
Yeah, but that wasn't. I said that not in the same kind of.
I'm talking like Pierre LeBrun. I'm talking like hockey analysts. The people that are paid for this. They're like, if the Devils are lucky if they actually backdoor to the postseason. Meanwhile, they had the third best record in the league this year with one of the youngest teams in hockey. So, Brandon, I'm going to give you a few minutes. I think we're probably best to maybe run with, and tell me if you want to do something different, but something along the lines of pardon the interruption, where I'm just going to let you roll, say what's on your mind, and I'm not going to say a thing. Does that work for you?
No, that's cool.
Go.
Yeah, no. I think this series not only is great for our area in terms of hockey being relevant and really on top of New York, I think it's good for the sport. I think hockey is better when these two teams are consistently better and making deep playoff runs. And it sucks, though, because you would almost want this matchup later in the playoff bracket, right? Even the second round, obviously conference finals. So it kind of sucks in the first round that regardless of the losing or regardless of the winning team, a really good team is going home. So one of the advantages that kind of both teams share in this is the travel, or I should say lack thereof. I mean, really, as opposed to all the other playoff matchups, there really is. I mean, that's not traveling. Going from one side of the river to another. If you want to call that traveling, then I don't know what your metrics of distance are, but I mean, I think that's going to be great. Both of these teams are going to be fresh and energized going into each game. I think there's except for I think the gap between games, I think it's 5 and 6. I think it's 3 days, but if you got the 2 days with the 2-2 or the 2-2-1-1-1 playoff, I think it is, right? So it's going to be very good for that. But I think the Devils have kind of taken the mantle of what the Rangers were last year, where the inexperienced team, right, has made a playoff run and made the playoff appearance, hoping to go on a run. But I think they're trying to emulate what the Rangers have done and what they're trying to do again this year, where you have that young team that you had spent draft picks, you spent trade, free agency to acquire a core of talent, and the Devils are extremely young. So I think it's kind of the same inexperience or the you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's going to be great for them. I think they're going to go into the series thinking that they can beat the Rangers for sure, and think that they're the better team. And I'm not so sure that they aren't as decked out in Rangers as I am. But I think it's going to be fantastic. I like the Rangers as the experienced team now, coming off a conference final appearance last year. But I think this is going to be a hard-fought battle. I don't think it's going to be these puck drops, fights right from the get-go. I think both teams are going to go into this series, business first. Of course, you're going to get the natural intensity that this rivalry brings out on both sides. But I still think these teams are going to kind of keep this pretty professional in that sense. But playoff hockey is 3 times, 4, 5, 10 times different than what regular season hockey is. And I've been very excited for Rangers playoff runs in the past, but this one, to start off with the Devils and to have this with you, Scott, it is really quite a coming out of the gate thing for us. And it's just funny. Do we remember the beginning of the season when Coach Lindy Ruff is being booed? Oh, feels like decades ago now, doesn't it, Scott?
Yes, it does. But are you? By the way, are you done? I didn't want to say anything unless you were.
No, I'm.
So
I'm gonna let you. Yeah.
The one thing about the Fire Lindy chant happened early on when the team lost its first 2 games of the season by a 5-2 score in both games, Philadelphia and Detroit. So it was a really rough start. But how often do you hear a fan base publicly chant an apology to the head coach? I have never seen anything like that in all the years I've been
in this area, in this locale, unheard of.
Yeah, and I don't say Lindy was like, listen, they had every right to, to complain and to basically just to gripe about this, and I respect that. But he's like, I appreciate it, but it's something that basically I a lot of even like Devils haters were looking at that and have the same attitude of just like that actually is something of credibility there. How often, like I said, do you see a fan base publicly apologize for the same person they were opting to try and fire? So there's cred there even with amongst the biggest haters. I do have my own thoughts, but I'm not going to roll into them until you're, like you said, if you're completely done, then we'll slip over to me.
Yeah. I mean, we'll do like a series pick in a couple minutes, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
As we continue. Yeah. Go on.
Before you go, Scott, because I obviously have the least input here. I just want to.
There you go.
I have 2 takeaways from what he said that I would like to, or what was just said, so that you can include it in what you have to say. Number 1, the travel point. I mean, I don't know where these guys live, but I suspect each of them have equal number of guys on the wrong side of the river. So there really is no travel to begin with, is my guess. And then to your point about the Devils fans apologizing, usually the best you get is if you've had a long-time coach, you called for his head, you get his head, you go somewhere else, and then you root for him somewhere else when you're not playing them. So, yeah, that was actually one of the strangest, classiest things you've seen in a sports fan base do, not just in the New York Metro. I mean, I would say anywhere at any level. So kudos to, I think I gave kudos then, and I will give kudos now. Now, Scott, as the fake producer on your fake PTI, I'll give back to you.
I've been a fan of the New Jersey Devils for 40 years. As you can see behind me, that is the opening night pennant from 1982 when Don Lever scored the game-winning goal and beats Pittsburgh. Have that been a fan this long? I have been through 10 years of unbridled misery. One could even argue it's been a little bit longer than that. So this has been a refreshing, recharging season for me on several fronts. I am well aware of what probably more than either one of you know exactly what this rivalry was and how long it's been and how messy it's been, even dating back to like 1985 when it was starting to pick up a little bit. I look at this series and I look at what's happening here and I look at what all the pundits are saying about how the Devils are inexperienced and they do not have training, in playoff format. And you said that and you were correct there. The one thing I'm going to say in this case here is the Devils are a quick adapt team. They have been playing a playoff style of hockey pretty much all season to a lesser degree than than playoff is, but greater than the regular season normally would be. Playing as the underdog, playing as that perennial team that nobody gives respect to. This has been a squad that has been playing behind that 8 ball all season to a team record 112 points and a team record in wins. I believe here, in all honesty, the biggest key to this entire series is going to be in the first 2 games. I think as this series wears on, it's going to be greater and greater advantage to the Devils on a couple of different fronts. One, because they're going to adapt to the playoff experience very quickly. They're going to adapt to what that feeling is going to be like. As a young squad, I think they can be able to pick that up fairly quickly. The other side of this is they are a younger team. And they are also a better 5-on-5 team than the Rangers were. So in this case, if I look at the numbers as I pull them up, the Devils had the 3rd highest 5-on-5 goals of the entire, in all of the NHL this year. The Rangers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th. So in this case, there is a massive difference on 5-on-5. If this series should have to have games that go into overtime, that is going to be advantage Devils because of both the even strength side of it and also the lack of fatigue. When you have a player on there that scores 99 points as a 21-year-old, that is something that, while young, is going to give an advantage to a less fatigued team as this wears on, both in the games themselves and also in the series as well. I think if the Rangers are going to take this series, they are going to have to go up 2-0. You're going against a Devils team that is the 2nd best record on the road of any team in hockey this year. And Madison Square Garden is the pinnacle of on the road. And they are this season 3-0-1 against the Rangers. The only game that the Rangers actually beat the Devils was in overtime. So you look at all of those statistics, you look at all of those numbers, and the only X factor that keeps coming up in this is the lack of playoff experience. But if the Devils can adapt to that, if they can understand playoff experience and playoff hockey quickly, and I believe that they can and will take this series. Is it going to be long? Yeah. This series is going to go a minimum of 6 games here. I would not be surprised at all at 7. I will give it to the Devils on this. I'm going to say Devils in 6. I'm going to really go out on a limb on this one, put all my eggs into that basket there. I believe in this case, you have a faster team. You have a couple of questions when it comes to goaltending. There was some hate. There was some contempt there with the decision to have Mackenzie Blackwood as the backup. I don't entirely hate the decision, but you have Timo Meier, who is now ready and adjusted to hockey in New Jersey. Jack Hughes, his brother Luke might be getting some time. 2 games in, he's already got 2 points in his career. He might get some his time on this. It is new to them. But if they can figure out a way to adapt to the playoff experience of it, there is no reason why this team cannot go all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. My take only.
My thing on that, though, is I think I don't want to say that the Rangers are old because are they old? Yes, they're experienced, but they're not old. And obviously, there's no such thing. Yeah, they're older, of course, but there's no such thing in hockey, especially Stanley Cup hockey, is slowing the game down. mean, we hear that in basketball all the time, slowing it down, slowing the pace. You can't slow the pace down simply for the physics of gliding on ice. So it's just not possible in that sense. So I think if the Rangers can steal, split early because they're in Jersey first, split, take care of home ice, which is going to be extremely tough. Then
I don't really think there's a home ice in this one, actually.
No, I agree, but like if going Madison Square, if there was any kind of really kind of home ice advantage or comfort in being in a home arena, that would be arguably the one to be in. So I think if they can do that, they'll lose in Jersey for game 5 at that point. And maybe come back 5, 6, and close it out in 6. I think that's a lot to ask for. And then to win on the road in the game 7 is also a lot to ask for. So I really think, and who knows if the regular season series, in terms of the record, has anything to do with the playoff series. So we'll see how it goes. I also agree that this is going to be 6 at the very minimum. I can't see this being sweep or 5 games in any sense for either team.
Some of the pundits were like, the Rangers are taking this at 4. I'm like, bullshit.
No, they're not. No, they're not. No. So I think this is going to be a test of, honestly, the Rangers' defense and their goaltending, because as good as Shesterkin's been this year, last year, we've seen recently with his matchups against the Devils, a little bit of kinks in the armor. So I think if he can really kind of tidy up the screws in that sense, the Rangers need to stay on top of and take advantage of their power plays, which they have been tremendous on all season. I think that will have to be one of their mainstays in terms of getting over the hump of this team. But I don't know if there is a first round East or West that is as balanced or as unpredictable as this series.
Yeah. You look at some of the other ones out there, basically, Carolina and the Islanders. I don't think there's going to be much in something like that. But yeah, this is going to be something. This might be the start of the renewed rivalry. You talked about the fact that the rivalry had diminished in the last few years. I think in this case, this might actually 100% renew it, for years to come. This could in some ways be hockey's equivalent of Yankees Red Sox from like 20 years ago, which didn't have a lot of distance between the two either, for that matter. But I did have a question for you on something. Do you mind if I pick your brain on something here?
Sure.
Okay. It's going to take me a minute. I want to get your thoughts here. The New York Rangers, a team rich with a storied histories in the annals of hockey, century of prestige, tradition, plays in a facility known worldwide, Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena. One of the biggest payrolls in hockey, a team that has only made one trip to the Stanley Cup Finals in the last 20 years. The New York Yankees, a team rich with a storied history in the annals of hockey, a century plus of prestige and tradition, plays in a facility known worldwide, Yankee Stadium, the house that Ruth built, one of the highest payrolls in baseball, and a team that has only made one trip to the World Series in the past 20 years. Do you see how some of us might look at your fandom of the Rangers and say that you are basically rooting for hockey's equivalent of the Yankees?
No. I'm going to take this.
Please, go ahead.
I'm working on that too, man.
No, that's not.
The Yankees have, 20? Yeah. Oh, you want to talk about 20? But I don't think of the Rangers as a storied franchise in hockey at all. Like, as a somebody like from the outside in, I mean, they won it in 1940 and 1994. The Yankees got 20 plus. You have to pick 5 teams to get to the Yankees World Series total. I mean, the Yankees are a storied franchise. The history of baseball and the history of the Yankees are intrinsically tied. But the Rangers in hockey, it's like, oh yeah, the Rangers play hockey in New York. I don't hear about Gretzky or Hall, Lemieux. Those are the names that I think of when I think of hockey. Other than Messier coming,
video's going up in a couple of days.
Other than Messier coming over to the Rangers from Edmonton, do I really think of them as having one of the all-time No, I can't. I don't see them as parallels at all. Sorry.
No,
it's okay.
It's yeah. I don't. It's not. That's a totally apples to oranges to bricks. That's so to bricks. I mean, you get. I don't see. It really is the New York thing. The kind of how do I say if it weren't for the fact that the Rangers are an original six, maybe some of the lore is diminished. And yes, they've had some of these all-time players come through the locker room and won a chip, right? But it's not as much as I dog on the Yankees for their just mere existence. I gotta defend the Yankees in that sense. It's not, or just the question. That's no.
I was wondering
nor will I stand to be tied to any Yankee fandom. As the Ranger fandom and the Yankee fandom are so vastly on polar opposites of the spectrum. It's crazy. It's insulting. It really is. I got to be honest.
Well, I would say, other than that last bit, I would disagree. My recollection is that Devils and Mets fans were Devils, Mets, and Nets were with the Jets were tied together, and Giants, Yankees, Rangers, and Knicks were kind of tied together more often than the other than any other of the things. So on that one perspective, yeah. But here we are looking at the two of you guys, and you're both not even there, right? You got so it's no. I'm not feeling it at all. You can't elevate the Rangers like that. That's again somebody who hates the Yankees. You just can't do it.
All right.
I'm not really sure that there is a Yankees equivalent in hockey. I mean, they're just, we could talk about the Lakers or the Celtics in basketball, Duke in college basketball, some of the other blue bloods. The Cowboys
the Canadiens, but they haven't been relevant for decades.
Right. They had their shot, like they were working towards that, but then it's just, and some of it might have to do with 8 teams going into the playoffs for a long time, and the playoffs being as random as they are, although they're not as random as baseball playoffs. But still, that might be part of what goes on with that.
Fair. Brandon, on a scale from 1 to 10, how pissed are you at me right now?
I would, to be honest, though, I would argue they're closer to, like, I would say, well, no, the Red Sox have, 3 in the last? It's so
the Red Sox have been decent
maybe even the Dodgers, so maybe a team like that, but the Yankees certainly not.
He's like, them's fighting words.
Like the Cincinnati Reds. I think they're like the Cincinnati Reds.
No, you know who they are? They're the Oakland Athletics, right? They might be terrible right now, but like they've had some championships, like one every 20 years, one every 25 years, something like that. Yeah, historically always been relevant, right? Kind of one of the main franchises of the respective sports. I think that's a closer comp.
What about if you're going to stay in New York and stay in MSG and just go with the Knicks?
Sure.
There's a team that I would say the history and the value of the Knicks to the NBA far outweighs their championship pedigree. And maybe that's what you're saying with the Rangers.
Like he does the Yankees. For the record, I do want to say I did actually feel kind of bad bringing that up. Because actually this went on a much more friendly note than I was expecting it to, and I put the time in. I'm like, damn it, what do I do here? But yeah, sorry, yeah. I just figured, like I said, it's an interesting dichotomy on that. But yeah, a little disappointed that the contempt leading into this wasn't there. Oh well.
Although, I mean, the seasons don't line up exactly. But if you want to go into last year and then prospectively in this upcoming season, I mean, every New York team is in the playoffs. God damn.
Almost.
I mean, we We got 5 at the moment between the 3 hockey, 2 both basketball teams. Both the Yankees and the Mets made it last year. The Giants made it last year. The Jets make it next year, but that's what I'm saying. Next year.
Well,
all of us. Look at us. What are we? The Paul Rudd meme with the hot ones, the hot sauce. Look at us, all of us. Or the Spider-Man pointing meme. All of us New York teams.
That actually works. All 3 hockey teams should be all three Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I don't know why I called him Spider-Man. I guess he's from Bayside. But yeah,
one team actually has Spider-Man colors. Yours doesn't. We work out better for that. So
yeah, man. So. But all
right, so fair enough. The Spider-Man meme.
Listen, the internet exploded when Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire recreated the meme. The internet exploded. So the last Marvel film to really crush it at the box office.
Which should have, yeah.
Oh yeah. So, all right. So like I said, this is going to be hell on ice. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of content. Possibly a little bit of background banter between us on the Facebook group itself. But irrespective, it might go down in history as one of the absolute all-time classic, greatest hockey playoffs of all time. It really, really might. So, gentlemen, any other final thoughts on that?
Just can't wait for the puck drop.
Damn straight. Puck, yeah. All right, so switch over this way. What do you say? This is more your department, I'll admit, than my own. Obi, we're going to be talking a little bit.
Yeah. Ranger, hockey, I would still, confess and completely give to you as your baby on the show.
Well, I did do a commercial or 2 for the shit so I did have that back in the day. So. But anyway, yeah.
Brandon, Hollywood up-and-coming actor over here.
Hardly. So now I'm getting too old for it. The pain's too great. Brandon, the other team that you're sporting tonight, a team recognized by a somewhat forgotten but very enjoyable Will Smith rap song about the city of Miami. How's your team doing, pal?
Well, you take it one game at a time, and so far they have completed business. I said last week that I thought barring upsets and major injuries, the winner of that 7-8 matchup to be the 7th seed would potentially have the hardest path to winning a championship. Let's say they had gotten all the way that far. And so the Heat, by losing that game, have avoided that gauntlet that should come. And I don't know if they have an easier path. They just have it's more of a, I guess, easily navigatable path, if you want to say, because now that we've seen some chips fall and both teams have been diminished by injury, some more than others. We'll see Tyler Hero diving for a play with his wrist, breaks his wrist, 2 wrist injuries yesterday. We'll get to the other wrist injury in a little bit, but with Tyler Hero, so he's expected to be out essentially the rest of the playoffs, depending on how far the Heat were to make it. But Giannis on the Bucks side of that seems to be okay. They don't seem to be indicating that he's going to be in doubt for game 2 or even in question. And with a little bit of rest, they don't have to travel because they'll be in Milwaukee for game 2. I think he should be pretty okay. I still think this is going to be a really tough battle. Obviously, being one game ahead is always fantastic, but we've seen 1-0 leads blow in the playoffs a bunch of times. The thing with the Heat in this constructed roster is that more than any other team in the playoffs, they have the most undrafted guys. So it's I don't want to say it's Jimmy Butler or bust, especially now with Tyler Hero being out. But a lot of guys are going to have to really elevate their gameplay to be able to kind of help Jimmy overcome the Bucks, and then we see what happens after that. Max Strus is raining threes all of a sudden, like he's Storm from X-Men controlling weather, and you got a lot of defensive help between Vincent and rebounding with Kevin Love, who's creating a lot of transitional offense, being that he is so great at that outlet pass, right? Getting that rebound, kind of that overhead soccer pass down the court. We saw it with LeBron a million times. We even saw it back in Minnesota, even though he was doing it to nobody. He was doing it. And I think that really will help this Heat team get out some open threes in transition. But one thing I'm kind of, even in a win, disappointed on and disappointed with, especially going through the play-in tournament or April foolishness, as I would like to trademark it at this point, is Bam Adebayo. I mean, I like Bam. Really, he is a great player. He has skills that a lot of bigs don't have, but he doesn't have that. I don't want to say he doesn't have that dog, but like there are a lot of times where he is very passive, and he is kind of in the shadows. We all get that Jimmy Butler is the first offensive option on that team. He's the face of this team, but Bam, you got to be second. There is no reason why Bam shouldn't be what we want and we see Anthony Davis when he's at top of Anthony Davis. Is he as big as Anthony Davis? No, but he is Anthony Davis archetype player. So we should see that. And there are a lot of times where we don't, or I don't. It's frustrating, and we're going to need him, especially, and I said it like 18 times now, especially with Tyler Hero being out. He has to be that guy. It's got to be Jimmy and Bam, and then, whoever kind of has the hot hand as the third option, and you go it that way. The defense has got to be there, the rebounding there. You got to have the block shots. There's no reason why you can't block shots like Jaren Jackson Jr. in Memphis. There really isn't. He is one of the most athletic bigs we have in the league, and I want to see more from Bam. But this is still going to be a tough first round matchup against Milwaukee, regardless of whether Giannis is 100%, 90%, 85%. It's going to be as tough as ever. So, Obi, you want to go on your Sixers?
Well, I will touch your team and segue to my Sixers. I think that if Giannis is out and Hero are both out the entire series, I think that favors the Heat because you're talking about the MVP versus the sixth man of the year. But I think if you're playing a healthy team, any of the other teams in the playoffs, presuming the other team is healthy, I think that Hero loss is going to be rough because you mentioned it. I mean, Jimmy's scorer number one. Hero might be the sixth man, but he's kind of scorer number two. So that was, I think, a devastating injury. And in some ways, because there's no timeline on him coming back, of the big three injuries we saw, maybe actually the worst. Because if the other team survive a few games, they may get their guy back. Now, the Sixers, look, the Nets, because of the original big three they had, were high up in the standings when it fell apart. And they did not just fall down and tumble, but they didn't fall enough. And the Sixers are the beneficiaries of that. Joel played 33 minutes, put up 26 points. And, anytime Joel gets to rest at least 10, you're excited. Harris was the number 3 scorer on the team over Maxey. Anytime Harris has a game where he does better than Maxey, that's a win for the Sixers because Maxey really has moved into that number 3 spot. I want to pretend that the Nets are a real NBA playoff basketball team. And instead, I feel like they got lucky because not lucky might not be the right word. They were good enough not to completely fall apart and fall out of the playoffs. And the Sixers are lucky enough to face them. So, look, if we can, as a Sixer fan, we can win the games with Embiid playing 33 minutes. That's so big for the next round. Especially if you end up playing the Celtics, which, I agree with what you said last week. It was better, I think, for the Heat to lose that. And you kind of get that. If we can beat Milwaukee, we get a rest, right? And that's what the Heat's looking at now. If we can get by them because he's hurt, playing the Knicks or the Cavs, that's kind of a series that we look at as a purely even series. We can do this. And Looks like the Sixers might be getting that with the Nets, and I'm relieved. So we'll knock wood, hope that continues. There's not much to say because the Nets just aren't a team that's putting things up. So I got that with the Sixers, but I think the bigger news is what went down in the West. I think the East, we had the major injury, and we saw the Heat take advantage of it. But what the Lakers did in the last 3 minutes of that ball game, to me, was one of the most felt like championship victories I've seen in a long time. It's like, we're about to win. Granted, it might be because Ja's hand was bent backwards and his middle finger was touching the back of his wrist, but still, like they just said 3 minutes, no points. Sorry, we're just going to block shots and turn them into easy layups. And that was the most noteworthy thing I think I really saw this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that series is very interesting, obviously, being that it's the Lakers and LeBron and the whole Ja Morant thing and just the Lakers, Grizzlies. I don't want to say rivalry, but kind of upsparked kind of fight, personal fight that they've got. Yeah, beef that they've got with each other, we'll say. But this injury to Ja, and I texted you guys in the group chat with Anthony Davis with the arm. Oh my God. The minute I saw that, I was like, I was Whitesnake. Here we go again. I was David Coverdale. Here we go again.
I think we all were.
Yeah, but he seemed to be all right. But it's Ja Morant wrist, and we saw him after the game in the locker room. He's got his hood up and is just kind of out of it. I mean, we don't really see that from him in that sense. So that, I think, is going to be very devastating. Look, we obviously the Lakers up 1-0 on the road, which is great because even if you split, you got the next 2 games at home, or if you can win both on the road, go up 2-0, you now can go home for 2. And if there's any team that could use rest after a first round matchup, it's this team in the Lakers. So this is a very pivotal point in their kind of, we'll say, playoff run. Very early after one game, they have to keep their foot on the pedal. They cannot become complacent. They have to, even if Ja is not out there, they have to go out there pretending like he is. And really put the pressure on a Desmond Bain or a Dylan Brooks to be that now number one option. And I don't think that they are capable of being that, especially when you're playing the same team for 4, 5, 6, 7 games. And during the season, when you play one game and you can kind of get away with that. But when you're, in a 4 to 7 game playoff series, you can't, against a experienced veteran Lakers team, you cannot get away with that. So I really think if the Lakers can, like I said, keep the foot on the pedal, can they sweep the Grizzlies if Ja's really going to be out of the lineup or just even 60% of what he normally is? So I think the Lakers are in a very unique situation now. But I do have to say that according to how we determine who the greatest ever, I mean, LeBron's got to lose this series.
He can't.
That's the only way. Hey, that's the only way.
He can't make it to the finals.
No, you can't lose. No, you can't lose into the finals. You have to lose to a Ja Morant-less or Ja Morant handicap team. That's going to be the only.
Goat conversation aside, I think you made a great point about this team. They can get the sweep and get the rest, and I think it combines with what I said. Are they going to be able to keep the foot down? And that's what we saw in the last 3 minutes of that game. That game got out of hand, and the Lakers did not care. They still played defense. They still blocked shots. They still passed the ball up for the breakaway. I mean, it was an embarrassing last 3 minutes, but the Lakers were just like, they put the boot on the throat. Ja's out. We're not letting you score. We're not letting you play. Defense. I mean, the guys blocking shots weren't even AD. He was getting the ball. So it was just, I agree 100%. And this is the team, so I know you guys had a lot of conversation about experience and playoffs and hockey, and I don't know the value of that, but I do know it matters in basketball.
It's not as much in basketball.
Okay, because in basketball it does show, because you've had those bad Cleveland teams, like you had LeBron with the Cleveland, they would just turn it on in the playoffs. You had him at Miami, they would just turn it on in the playoffs. So can this Laker team do it? Probably. I do wonder when they get to a Denver or the winner of Golden State Sacramento and they start to face teams that have some depth and some bench. But against this Ja Morant list, if it's less or even without the two big men team, I really like the Lakers' chances a lot. And I like them to be quicker and get that rest. Unlike, I think Golden State, on the other hand, who lost, feels okay. I mean, Curry got a 3 off at the end of the game to tie it. I think they would have, could have they gotten that to overtime. Does the Fox keep scoring, or does the experience matter there? And I think that's the series where we're really going to get a good look at experience versus youth.
Yeah, I think, and we got a picture of Rui Hachimura, the last Lakers point between Rui, Austin Reeves, and D'Angelo Russell, who was 1 point away. He had 19. The Lakers had 5 guys that scored. Well, let's just say 19 or more. So the balanced scoring was there. It's got to keep up if they want to sweep, or even just because, even if you want to AI, give them one game, gentlemen sweep them. But I think the Lakers really are in a unique position. And now, on their other side, who they would potentially meet up with, either the Warriors or the Kings, I think that's a very interesting matchup as well, because they are kind of the polar opposites. I mean, there is no other playoff experienced team than the Warriors, and there is no less playoff experienced team than the Kings. So it's really kind of fitting that, especially fresh off a title, that matchup happens. And I think the Kings are relishing in the moment. Yes, they will have to go on the road eventually, but if you can take care of business at home, I mean, you got home court advantage. I mean, you win in 7 at that point. And we all know what the Warriors have been on the road this year, and that's been the worst team in basketball. So again, playoffs is different. We know it's Steph, Clay, Draymond, Steve Kerr, Iggy, what they do in the playoffs, what they've done in the playoffs. But I think the Kings are going into this series, went into the first game with we don't care. It doesn't matter. It's the playoffs. We might have the most favorable home court advantage, because there is no more hungrier fan base. There won't be as an electric atmosphere, even with the Knicks. In Madison Square Garden, like we gave with the Rangers before, the Kings in that light the beam. I think that's powerful stuff, and I think the Kings are going to just tunnel vision, just push the Golden State Warriors and really push them in pace. I think the youth, they're going to try and get out in transition. They're going to keep Dre, Clay, and Steph moving constantly, tire them out. But I think that the only way I pick the Kings in this series, and I'll say in 7, just because of the experience thing. But with the Warriors, we saw Wiggins return. He looked pretty good. Well, it wasn't fantastic. Wasn't what we saw last year in their playoff run. But they're going to need him to, I don't want to say be the number one option, but there might be a game or two in this series where he will have to be. Not maybe so in point total, but in point of what he's asked to do offensively. We know Steph and Clay are going to shoot the lights out with 3, whether it's not a great percentage or not, they're going to shoot. But Wiggins, whether it be with some outside shooting, getting to the basket, he's going to have to be that X factor if the Warriors want to advance past the newly playoff, excitement and thrill team that is the Sacramento Kings. But yeah, I don't know. In Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, whew.
So I mean, yeah. I mean, I think you're right about Wiggins. Wiggins is going to have to win them a game. So let's assume that's the road game, and then Clay and Curry alone can win them the 3 at home. I mean, just do it that way because I think you're right about Wiggins needing to do it. But the good news is Wiggins theoretically should be rested. I mean, maybe not emotionally, but physically. And sometimes when you're not emotionally rested, a little physical exertion works the body well. We'll see if that happens. But I do think it's important to note that this incarnation of the Golden State Warriors, essentially the Steve Kerr coached Warriors, have never gone down in a series 0-2. So we will see if that continues. A lot of, there's not a lot to fully glean from game 1 of the series. Look, I mean, I think you really have a better sense after game 2, right? Because after game 2, either the home team has stood its ground, the home team has split, or the road team looks dominant. And that's really when you can get a sense what those 2 games are. Because even in the case of, in this case, if you can get the split and you're Golden State, that first game, missing the 3 by Wiggins, missing the 3 by Curry doesn't matter anymore. You've got the split. On the other hand, you lose. Well, now it's really got to be set into that team's mind. How the heck do we win on the road? And I know they're the most experienced team, and I know they got the coach, but you really don't want that starting to wear down on you and wear down on you and wear down on you. Because that can matter, especially when, Wiggins is back, but it's not helping, right? Well, of course it's not helping. He's just came back. He played, 28 minutes. He's not full bore on. So there's a lot that goes on in that series. But coaching-wise, it's up to Kerr to really find a way to win this game now. Get this monkey off their back early and often if they can. They're actually probably better off, winning this game and then, win their 2 at home and then win the last one on the road as opposed to wait until they get back home just to lift the monkey, shake it out, and get it clear. But, it's easier said than done.
I think they have to focus on getting Wiggins into a rhythm. We know that Clay and Steph and Draymond, just based on their style of play, are very adaptable. Obviously, they've played with Wiggins, won with Wiggins. But in terms of getting him into a rhythm, I think is going to be so important. If he can get, whether it be in this next game, game 2 in Sacramento, or going home to a game 3 in San Francisco in front of their home crowd, having his first basket fall, having his second basket fall is going to be so crucial in keeping him engaged and kind of shutting the noise out. Because I still think, even after what he did last year, if he is kind of not in rhythm and out of sorts, especially fresh off coming what he went through, and I'm not saying he's going to melt down, but we're not going to see the Wiggins that the Warriors are going to need to go on another deep playoff run and hopefully maybe go back to back. Well, not hopefully. I don't hope they go back to back, but for them, hopefully they go back to back. So
I did not think you meant yourself personally with your Miami Heat hat on. That was not taken that way. So, I mean, I will say this, though. All these games we've talked about, the biggest surprise to me wasn't even the Heat winning, because I saw Antetokounmpo go down. That gave the Heat the opening they needed. And the one thing about the Heat is if you open it up, I have no doubt that they're going to slam that door. They're going to take advantage of it. That is the culture. That is Heat culture. Is probably what you love about the Heat. You open the door, they're stomping through.
Plus, they were in control the whole game regardless, before injuries.
Yeah. But the Clippers beating Phoenix, I have to say that surprised me. And then I heard this stat: 0-7 Kevin Durant's last 7 playoff games. That was shocking. So maybe he's not just the greatest basketball player living right now, because it's 0-7 now, or maybe it's 0-8 now. But I was shocked. I expected Phoenix at home to take both games, and I really expected if it went long, it to be the home team winning type situation, not a resurgence of that man on the screen right there in Leonard, who I love. I loved him when he was in Sacramento before he was the heart of Sacramento. And wow, just him and Westbrook, who needs PG-13?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, and you say Kevin Durant being 0-7. I think I heard a stat before too today. I think it was he's averaging or most points in a 7-game losing streak in the playoffs. I think second on that list is a guy you might have heard of him, Michael Jordan, but apparently he never lost in the playoffs, never lost at all.
Isn't that the guy who plays Creed?
So it doesn't matter. So yeah, I was very surprised.
Right?
What's that?
He was the guy in Space Jam 2, right?
Yeah. That one. I was also surprised with this game. I wasn't expecting the PG-13 list Clippers to kind of really give it to the Suns. I mean, it wasn't a blowout, but I mean, there was no point where I was like, the Clippers, I really think have this. I think they have the advantage in coaching. I think they have the advantage in depth. I think they have the advantage in individual, let's see, kind of playoff or when pressure guy, like I in clutch time, I don't care with the talent. I'm taking Kawhi over Durant or Booker or CP3 because what he has shown in not only San Antonio but in Toronto and in certain points. I mean, he's been injured a lot in his time with the Clippers, but we've seen a lot of clutch Kawhi Leonard in a Clippers uniform, and that happened yesterday. And let's not forget Russell Westbrook and what he did. I mean, he what he did defensively and to kind of really irritate the Suns. That block on Booker and then to throw it off of him going out of bounds. Just a lot of plays that don't come up on a stat sheet, but if you watch the game and you kind of understand how winning basketball kind of happens, I think you would see that he had a tremendous game and he was so pivotal, and he's going to have to be if the Clippers are going to overcome this Suns team. Because I mean, if you're just drafting players from these two teams, Kawhi maybe is 2, but you would sure take Durant and then Booker and then Kawhi. But
I think so.
But I mean, there's something with this Phoenix. I don't know if it's Durant. I don't know if it's Chris Paul. What we know of him in playoffs. Or Booker, but there's no reason why this Phoenix Suns team should lose to the Los Angeles Clippers based on expectations, based on what they just did in recent playoff runs. They had gone to the finals 2 years ago. They did lose terribly in the second round to the Mavs last year. But you would think after that, you come into this first round, they should be hungry as hell to want to kind of do what the Lakers are doing, and to just put the necks on them and really try and put this team away. And I have yet, or it'll be yet to see if that happens in the series. But I don't see why I don't see how the Clippers, like on paper, should beat the Suns team, but they might. And this looks like it might go 6-7 games.
Yeah, I mean, I will just add to everything I said and you said. One of the things you pointed out, which I think is glaringly obvious in the box score, so not in the box score necessarily, is Russell Westbrook's hustle. There is no Russell Westbrook hustle stat, but it's been his career-defining thing his entire career. If he never wins a championship, he will get into Hall of Fame as the Charlie Hustle of basketball. I mean, just 100 miles per hour, 100% of the time. That's who he is. But the one glaring weakness in this Suns team was we are going to get rid of some of our depth so that we can get Kevin Durant. And when you look at the box score, and I'm not you get into some of those deeper stats, but the plus minus of the 4 guys on the Clippers bench is all over 10. And that bench just came out and crushed. And as good as a game as Kawhi had, 38 points, that's nothing to laugh at. That's something to be proud of, actually. The rest of it was done by the bench is just going to crush the Suns bench, which means that Durant, who's averaging 30 points in each of these losses, as you said, needs to find 5 more points, 10 more points, because he's going to need to average 35 because the bench isn't going to score. So Durant either needs to get younger and play more minutes, or the bench is going to have to magically make something happen. And they're supposed to do it when they're at home, and they were at home and did it. So I'm still going to have faith in Phoenix because one game is just one game. But I think everything else you pointed out is right. I mean, probably the second best coach in the West is sitting over there in Ty Lue, right? I mean, it's Kerr and Lue. And then it's a bunch of guys you kind of heard of sometimes maybe have gone through the coaching tree, gone around, whatever. But it's Kerr and Lue. And you got to have faith that giving Lue one game means you're going to give Lue another game or another game and another game. So Phoenix and Durant have some serious work cut out for themselves by going the no bench route.
By the way, I didn't even mention DeAndre Ayton, who flat out, let's be honest, he sucks. He like for real, like for the number one pick to be like what I say about Bam, like you for your size and what you can do, you gotta be like dominant, and you're not. Like there is no reason why DeAndre Ayton, Booker, Chris Paul, and Kevin Durant should lose to Kawhi Leonard and Russell Westbrook. Yes, and a great bench, but I mean,
they should be able to put enough space between them.
Yeah,
yeah.
By the way, and if Durant loses this first round series after being swept in the first round last year, if I hear his and LeBron's name in the sentence one more time, I'm actually going to jump off a cliff. It shouldn't even be comparable. And not even I remember the days where is Durant better than LeBron? Durant will never and has never been better than LeBron, regardless of what happens in this series. Okay. We'll move on.
All right. Basically, do you want to do another show just on that? I mean, I'm okay with it. But
we could do a whole show on comparing other basketball players to LeBron.
Oh, yes.
And seeing how our man reacts.
We're going to be talking about this one, by the way. I really want to talk to you on this because this is your team. This is your dude. And in some ways, this might actually be your wallet because he signed an extension.
Is my account.
5 years, $255 million, which is $51 million annually. This, by the way, actually is the highest here, but actually not the highest overall in guaranteed money because he's only guaranteed $179.3 million. You are a fan of this team, so I am really, really, really curious, and you've been mum on this, and I'm glad you have been, what your thoughts are here.
So I think you're going to be disappointed because, I'm happy. Let me just say I'm happy. I'm happy they did it now. The choices were do it now or wait till next year. Mm-hmm. If they wait till next year and he flops, then they get out, yay. And if he's good, then it's more money. Mm-hmm. The question is, to me, there's I've been thinking about this all day. There's basically 3 type of quarterback contracts in the NFL for veterans. There's the we tag you and then we pay you top 5 quarterback money, but not the most. There is the we sign you before your contract's over and we give you the new record deal. Or we let you go somewhere else and somebody signs you for about half of that top number. Those are the quarterback deals. And I looked at Jalen Hurts, and yes, there's some nerves because he's a running quarterback and he has a lot of numbers on the ground. But this was a guy whose accuracy was severely questioned. This is a guy who went into his offseason and by all accounts did what you want somebody to do. So as a Philadelphia sports fan who saw Simmons not do that and not learn to shoot, you saw a guy went to all the right people, did all the practices and said, I am going to be a successful passer And his numbers, in addition to his running numbers, bore that out. So I think the right move for this team was to do this now and get it at lower $55 million than after or with the deals that are going to come next year with the Herberts and one of the truly great quarterbacks in Cincinnati when he gets his deal done, the guy who deserves to be the number one player caller. I mean, there's a problem in general with quarterback contracts. That's a whole nother conversation, as you can attest to as a Giant fan. And that's the other thing. I didn't want to be in a position where they had to tag two guys and then make the other guy angry so Saquon doesn't come because he got tagged, because they couldn't truly negotiate with two guys. So I think it's just the right thing. I am waiting to see what the details of this contract are. Usually Howie puts a void year in there. So this is probably truly spread out over 6 years. I would suspect it's very heavy this year. They have almost $20 million under the cap this year. So a lot of it's going to be right now, as much as they can now. And then A.J. Brown's going to probably get cut on his big $30 million year, but that was kind of expected no matter what. How's it good? And he gets this year with his three big weapons. Smith, the tight end who is on every one of my fantasy teams tonight, Goddard. And I Goddard, and I still can't think of his name. And of course, A.J. Brown. So I'm happy for it. I think it was the right deal. Howie has been great at manipulating the salary cap. Usually you give the quarterback this deal now, you make him happy. He's more willing to restructure to keep a few of his weapons or his favorite players on the team. And the only other thing I thought could have happened is that Jalen Hurts seemed to be the only guy in the NFL who I could imagine doing what Voldemort did and taking only 30 and restructuring all the time, but high guaranteed money, but only 30 against the cap or per year. But he did not do that. And whatever. I mean, I'm happy. They got him. They got the quarterback. Could this blow up like Wentz did? Yes. But did Wentz blow up that horribly? No, they moved him. The other teams are the ones that suffered with Wentz, not the Eagles. They're like, oops, bye. Made the decision quick. Let somebody else make that somebody else's problem. Like, we know it wasn't a one-off year. This is who the guy is. But again, by all accounts, this is a great locker room guy. This is a guy who knew he had a deficiency and went and worked on it. I mean, going into the season, I did not know how the Eagles were going to beat the Cowboys. I thought the Cowboys had a slightly less the team wasn't as good, but I thought the quarterback was better. Like, that was the thing. I'm still a guy who's like, Dak deserved his $40 million. I still think he did, even with the subpar season he had last year. Like, he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. But I thought Hurts was going to be not as good as Dak. And now I'm like, all right, they're at least even. I guess, the other thing, since it's my rant, is, I mean, there's only, at a time, I'm only willing to call 5 quarterbacks great at a time. And I keep a guy on always 1 year too long and always put him on 1 year too late. So right now, Hurts needs another year like that to get the list. Right now, the list to me is Rodgers, which is why I totally agree with Brandon. You don't not get him because he's still a great quarterback. I'll keep him on 1 year too late. I'll forgive one bad year. Obviously, Patty Mahomes. Burrow earned his way on last year, and I reluctantly have Allen on that list. So is Hurts there? No. Could he make it and be number 5 on my max list of 5? Yes, especially since I can easily see Allen or Rodgers falling off. But like I said, I agree with Brandon. He's on the list right now. You put him on your team, your playoff team, and the Jets need to do what it takes to get him. So that's my opinion. And I've been thinking a while about writing an article about how the quarterback market in the NFL is messed up, and it messes up all the other players, and they need some sort of QB or veteran exception to fix it because it's hurting everybody else's salary in the NFL. And
it's going to be interesting.
Beneficiary.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens in this case here, because there's obviously the pressure is going to be on him right now, and also in this case, and we talked about this a little bit. I know you read it, but nothing else. But the Daniel Jones deal, the 4 years, 160, obviously had an impact on him. So Hurts might actually be, grateful to his division rival in this case. The pressure is clearly going to be on Jalen Hurts here. There's a lot of, in this case, 1 Super Bowl will probably warrant it. 2 is better. None at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many times you show up. If you Jim Kelly this thing and you never get a Super Bowl out of it, it is a waste of a deal. Now, one thing I want to mention, you mentioned this real quick. You mentioned basically Dallas. I want to point something. We didn't talk about this, but I really want to, you guys obviously know about the glare at AT&T Stadium. This is a picture of, Dallas and the Giants, and you can see the glare coming straight down. The players have been asking for years to get curtains put up. Des Bryant had asked for it. I think some of the players have asked for it. Jerry Jones was like, no, it's fine. It's okay. We don't need it. You guys may have already heard this. Taylor Swift got the curtains to go up for the concert. Jerry Jones was like, okay, we'll put the curtains up for you. The players, no. Taylor Swift, yes. That isn't happening right now for a Taylor Swift concert. Let's see what happens with the regular season.
I have a comment on the pressure on Jalen Hurts. What's more pressure filled? Playing well enough to get a life-changing wealth contract, $179 million guaranteed, or the pressure to live up to it once you got that money already? The
second one.
You think the pressure's right? Because I think Ben Simmons has figured out a way to handle the pressure of the second one just fine.
I think
you and I could be angry at Ben Simmons, but Ben Simmons
the problem is though, you can essentially put Ben Simmons as your last roster spot and still have a team out there. Sure, you can do that with football and your franchise quarterback, but you can't do that. You could do it in basketball, but you can't do it in football.
That's the pressure for the team and the team having to deal with it. That's not the pressure on the player themselves. That's where I'm coming from.
I think in this case, the player has had a structure and a degree of pressure living, up to that point. I mean, last year, Jalen Hurts made, I think, like $3.9 million, somewhere around there. Obviously, nothing on our level to sneeze at, but from an NFL standpoint, So that's been his mentality up to this point. Yes.
He was making the kind of money that if you don't make tomorrow, you can easily run out of.
Sure, yeah.
Whereas $180 million, you have to work.
My point is that, when you have a mentality of $4 million and you suddenly have a mentality of $51 million, the pressure is on you so much greater. I don't care if they say they don't read social media. They do. They do study these things. They do hear what the fans have to say. They do hear what the radio has to say. It is still impactful in a lot of psychological ways. And Philadelphia, as you probably know, unlike certain places like, say, I don't know, Ohio, has a little bit more of a passion fan base, and a less patient fan base than maybe some of the other cities would have out there. And if he struggles and they get out of the gate or he gets injured, or something like that, and the injury is self-contained. If he ends up doing something stupid where actually he ends up hurting himself off the field, that fan base and that press outlet is going to turn on him like that. And yes, it's going to affect the performance, I think.
Well, that I will agree. If he an off the field injury, on the field not living up to this, the vitriol will be much worse than it would have been, because remember, this was a prove-it year for him, right? We've heard the talks that they were interested in Russell Wilson. If they did bad, we see that everyone saw there's 4 quarterbacks, possibly 5 in this draft class, not to mention how many guys we're now seeing consistently hit late, because nobody knows how to figure out a quarterback. I mean, because we do have Russell Wilson, we do have Jalen Hurts as a second-round pick, we do have Purdy, last guy, you can find it's gonna, conversations are starting to turn to like they do with running backs. You can find the quarterback. If the problem is you don't know what you're looking for, but that's a whole again, I can do a whole thing on quarterback and their value in the NFL. But I think that this was the deal he was going to get. I think the Eagles probably saved $3 to $5 million per year by doing it now and not after Burrow and Herbert reset the market. Now,
but
I don't know if he would. Yeah. No, I don't think Daniel Jones did really anything to change the market. I mean, he didn't get the 45 he wanted. He got the 40, which was, I think, not market changing. If he got the 45, I think there would have been this could have been 57 as opposed to what it was. But the person who's probably most unhappy is got to be Lamar, because he didn't get more than what Lamar was apparently offered 180 guaranteed, and he didn't even surpass the 180 guaranteed mark. And so what is the value of Lamar? This is the guy who got to a Super Bowl. Lamar won one playoff game. There's I don't know what's going to happen. Like, again, the quarterback market is just
Deshaun Watson messed it up.
Deshaun Watson messed it up for Lamar because Lamar thought he should get that.
But everybody could pull up the Scott with the screen you had before. It was a $51 million. It was the highest paid. It was like Rodgers. Yes, okay. So let's look at this list. Let's start from the bottom. Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Question marks, right? Question marks. Maybe about the quarterback. Maybe about the rest of the roster. But, they go hand in hand in some way, shape, or form. Deshaun Watson and the Browns. Honestly, they're screwed. They're not winning anything.
Oh, yeah, that's a laughably bad deal.
They really – well, okay. They're not doing anything. Cardinals and Kyler Murray, screwed. They're not doing anything. Right, at least from now, the Broncos and Russell, they're screwed. Okay? And Aaron Rodgers and the Packers – that divorce should be happening. I don't know. It should be any minute now. But it seems to be a little bit on hold.
I believe it's happening in 14 days.
That's okay. That's fine. But I don't want
immediately after the Jets pick, then we'll be okay. We can't get that first round pick. Let's make a trade.
And we'll see. Yes, they have Jordan Love, but obviously they'll still have question marks post Aaron Rodgers. And now you come up to Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, you already had a bunch of key guys leave and depart. And you're going to have guys that are going to depart within the next 2 to 3 years. Some key guys. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's great for Jalen personally, but I don't know. So, I don't know.
But your argument, right? Your argument literally just now was, and the Jets probably shouldn't sign Aaron Rodgers.
That's different though. That's different though. The Eagles are paying a roster. The Jets essentially aren't paying a roster yet.
The Eagles aren't paying a roster yet though either. That's the thing. The Eagles are still so young.
The Jalen Hurts contract is going to line up with wanting to have this roster.
Okay. But if you go back up to that list, Scott, do me a favor, go back up to that list, and I will close this thing. By next year, Jalen Hurts will be at best the third highest paid quarterback. At best. At the end of next year, we will be talking about both Herbert and Burrow having passed him by the end of next year. Probably Lamar Jackson having passed him. So he's already going to be the fourth guy down the list. That's how quickly this list changes. And I would argue that Josh Allen in Buffalo, they are a perennial playoff team. Are they better than Kansas City? No, but they're a perennial playoff team who, I mean, if I asked you to bet a reasonable amount of money in the Josh Allen era, if Josh Allen doesn't get hurt and plays for 10 more years, do you think they'll pull off a Super Bowl? I mean, I do. I think they'll slip through and win one. There's no reason to not think he's...
Yeah, they can rifle one off.
They can get one.
Yeah, so they can get one. I mean, you got to look at what else is around. But, it's that's the landscape of the NFL. If you can get one in 10 years, I think that
as long as Buffalo can maintain a comparable roster, level of talent throughout the roster,
right.
Yeah, I think maybe at one point a couple things go their way. Josh Allen has a career year. Yeah, sure.
Can I just point out, if you look at these
the other teams, no, I don't.
That's exactly what I was going to say. If you look at these, the 6 players that are on here, as the 6 highest, paid quarterbacks next season, only 3 of those teams actually have a shot of even reaching the postseason. I mean, Russell Wilson, God knows what's going to happen there. Kyler Murray and all that kind of stuff.
That division alone.
Yeah, and then Deshaun Watson, we've already established that that's a laughable contract. 3 of those. So the owners are looking at this and being like, okay, there is right now a combined 99, what is it? 135, 145 million, 155 million dollars, 145 million dollars between 3 players there that are on dead teams, and the owners are looking at that right now.
I hope they are, because I agree with that statement. The NFL and how it's paying its quarterbacks, which is, so to me, that's a different conversation. Do I think Jalen Hurts got the contract I would expect Jalen Hurts to get? I got no problem with it.
He's only 24 too.
I would love to see the NFL find a way to fix its quarterback payment problem.
They're going to have to,
because they're going to have to, because
well, then essentially what you're asking for is to have quarterbacks on an entirely different pay scale, money coming from a different, like I think, but that opens Pandora's box, because then who's supposed to say this next diva receiver was like, you know what? Nah, us receivers, we should have our own, or
kickers are like, it's our time.
Yeah,
I will tell you why. Because here's why. The NFL has this, and honestly, Brandon, you may be too young to remember this, but there was a period of time, and I know Scott remembers it, when the NFC East, or the San Francisco 49ers, won the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The thing about that is all of those Super Bowls, for the most part, most of them stank. Mm-hmm. And the reason was offense needs to be good so a team can come back. And in order to make offense good, we have prioritized the quarterback. And that's how we've actually gotten the rules that we have today, where it's less of a brutal sport. Still a brutal sport. Don't laugh at it. Don't think you can go out there and play with those guys. They will maul you and you will be chewed up. But they had to de-emphasize some of the things to allow for more offense, not because scoring is good, but because scoring allows for the score, who's winning, to change, and for larger comebacks. And in doing so, they've prioritized the quarterback, made the quarterback position uber important. What you could simply do is say, all right, quarterbacks, you get starter, first, and second quarterback, and this is what you get paid for the year, no matter what team you're on, and some other way of incentivizing the quarterback to stay to your team. Because I can argue from year to year whether the defensive end is my most important guy, my left tackle is my most important guy, my wide receiver is the most important guy. The rest of the league seems to have figured out a way to say, these 3 wide receivers, these 2 defensive ends, this tackle, they are all equally important, and their pay scale stays the same. But they can't do that with the quarterback. Either you have a quarterback or you don't. So when you have a quarterback, you go, okay, you're the highest paid quarterback because I don't want you going anywhere else. Or you're Baker Mayfield and you go somewhere and you keep your $8 million.
Or
that's
or essentially quarterbacks, there's no salary cap.
Or there's no salary cap, because there can't be another position that's going to do that just because I can value a defensive end over a wide receiver. We see it all the time. We see this,
Yeah, but doesn't that also play into, how the makeup of a team? Because let's just say a quarterback and a receiver are so tied at the hips that some teams would prioritize that receiver over a pass rusher. So then it's all objective at that point.
Right, which then means that salary cap gets spread out differently. But that's my point. Those other players, I can make a choice between, let's say, J.J. Watt and A.J. Brown. J.J. Watt's done.
Say T.J. Sorry, T.J.
T.J. Watt and A.J. Brown. Like, I can make that decision and kind of equate them. I cannot equate A.J. Brown, T.J. Watt, Larry Fitzgerald in his prime, and Patty Mahomes. I'm going to take Patty Mahomes. I'm going to do everything I can to get Patty Mahomes and try to find the 3rd, 4th, or 5th best receiver and his 3rd, 4th, or 5th best defensive lineman. That's just what's happening right now. So you have to change the rules to stop that, or change the economic system to allow teams to be more balanced. Because every now and again, you're going to get a Tom Brady who says, I'll take $20 million. And, oh, by the way, can you buy TB12 products? But with that, I know, Scott, we're running over time. I'm going to drop this subject. But
why there's been talk of doing an extra show during the week.
Yeah, because this is a fascinating thing around the quarterback.
You've got this, not out of it. So, all right, let me close that out. Burp. All right, so I figure we wrap it up at this point. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
I just
Let's
want
go Sixers.
Go Sixers, go Heat. We didn't mention them, the Knicks and Cavs. Knicks with a really tight win in Cleveland. With Donovan Mitchell had a great game. So I think it's going to be a awesome series as well. We didn't get to it. Josh Hart has been ruled out for game 2. So hey, I mean, it's going to be Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, Mark Cuban. I mean, are you watching? That's all I gotta say. I mean, you blew it up for what? So
For who? For
that's
what?
my final thought. Tomorrow, Rangers, Devils. Can't wait for that. And the Heat. And the Mets out in LA. God, can I have all these winning teams at once? It's driving my head crazy.
It's a good time to be a fan of the
rare
New
time
York
for
City.
me. I gotta relish
Good.
it.
Yeah, it's a good time to be a fan in the New Jersey, New York metro area. All right, gents. Thanks as always. I appreciate it. Like I said, it's going to be for a wild ride on several fronts, but that's the good as always. Next up for Tales from the Film Set, we will be talking about Yamcha finally getting a win in Dragon Ball, and the internet is losing its mind. So anyway, that's all. Take care.